What is up, you absolute stunners? Welcome back to Budget Cars and Bikes and a very, very special bike to review. It's taken me 40 years of saving and dreaming to be able to afford to and be in a position to buy this bike. And finally it's here. So if you're interested in finding out more, stay tuned, we'll get into it. As I said, welcome back guys to Budget Cars and Bikes and to the Harley Davidson fatbob 114 Milwaukee 8, which we have pulled the trigger on. If you saw the original video we did on the test ride, the red one, we took out from Harley Davidson in Plimpton, near Plymouth, and my gushings over that. There was a few negatives, a few positives, as you would expect to find in any bike really, I guess. I waited around about a month. I couldn't put a deal together with them, but I did put a deal together with the guys at Doble Motorcycles, the Honda dealership, around London somewhere, just on the outskirts, for this. And why did I bother to do that? Why did I get rid of the GS 1250 BMW? Well, because they offered me crazy money. I was asking around for Part X prices on that GS for many, many reasons, and I was getting offers around about £8,500 to £9,500. Bearing in mind it was $9,999 to me, but I didn't pay that much because we did a deal on two other bikes, the CB1100 and the GSX 1400. Again, I hope you've seen the videos on that. But then I got hold of Doble because they had this in stock, and they offered me a mighty £10,000 as a Part X on my GS 1250 2019 with 28,000 miles. And I think you've got to agree that is a stunning PX price, and I just couldn't resist it. I'd already ridden one of these, I knew I liked it, and I'd waited 40 years since seeing my first Harley Davidson, probably more than that actually. I was about 15, so 42 years. And I thought it was a high time I went out and bought one, so I did, basically. This was £13,500 minus the £10,000, and basically I gave them £3,500. And here it is in all its glory with some extras. It did come with a kind of luggage rack that came across here with a sissy bar. I didn't like that, so I took it off. What I'm going to do is just get the luggage rack just to fill up that space there. And in the bag they had this kind of 7x5 plate, which I popped onto there. The eagle-eyed view may have noticed it's got a Vance and Heinz competition-only exhaust system with that beautiful kind of brushed copper look there for the heat shields. Really, really love the way that kind of sets off the black and the kind of copper, as I said there, bronze, whatever you want to call it. And there's not much else in the way of extras. I did get these little beauties off Amazon. They were only about a tenner. I've got a set of 4 with some orange bulbs, but I can't do the backs. Why, you may say, can I not do the backs? Well, because that's a sealed unit. That's an LED light, as in that's the rear light and the indicators and the daytime running light for the backs. So it's all kind of a sealed unit. You can't just replace the lens. You can replace the whole light. And some people have put a kind of brake light, rear light up in here as well, which I have considered. Again, the eagle-eyed of you may have noticed it doesn't have the usual side number plate. It's got it slapped right in the back there. I got a feeling this is a modified unit because, as you can see, just in there they've kind of cut out little bits, but I think that looks really, really nice. It covers up this monumental gap here to here, which I've never liked on here. I think that fills that up really, really nicely. Talking of things that are nice, the seat, really super, super comfortable. Loving that seat. Not so much loving this silliness here. We've already bought another one of those because I'm just not a fan of that. And as usual, there are some scratchings around about here. Not quite sure why they all get that. Quite exposed, I guess, but no other marks on the bike at all. It's just a stunning, stunning bit of kit. I think you'd have to agree. There's a lot of things to like about this bike, including the headlight. If I stick the lights on there, as you can see, that is just, it's just such a stunning bike. But I am considering getting a little fairing, like a bikini fairing, because one of the downsides of this bike, I mean, I've ridden this now for quite some time. I've done a couple of 100 miles on it. Not what I normally do. Normally I'll give you a walk around, then we'll go for a ride. I am going to do a ride on this specific bike as well. Of course I am, and I'll show you any mods that we do in the future because I'm going to keep this for a little while. But there's a couple of things I've kind of found out since I've had it, which is only a week, and the 200 miles I've done. A couple of little things I can't quite work out. I mean, what is that about? I'm at a loss of how anybody would sign that off as a design. Look at the fucking state of that. This is a £13,500 premium motorcycle, and they couldn't find a better design for the clocks than that. That's bloody awful in my opinion. Another thing which apparently is quite common on these is this little LED screen, LCD screen here rather, that shows you, if we put the ignition on for a second, it should come up and show you all that lot there, which is all lovely and dandy. And the only problem is it mists up really, really badly. You get condensation in this part here, which means not only do you get the reflection, as you can see, all over the place, which can be very annoying in the sun because basically you can't see very much because your miles an hour is actually right in the middle of there. Your range to empty is right in the middle of there. The gear you're in is right in the middle of there. It's all in this tiny, I mean, there's my thumb. It's not much bigger than a thumbnail. And it reflects the sun quite badly and it condensates all around here for a while. I've had it for the last 2 hours until it burnt off. Very, very annoying. Not quite sure what to do about that, if I'm honest. But as I said, that I'll go back and show you again because I just found that to be extraordinary. So that's 2 negatives I found on the bike so far, but that is, if I'm honest, about it. The only kind of negative, which isn't the bike's fault, is it arrived with no battery power, as in I got all togged up, ready to go out, and the battery was as flat as a pancake. But they have apologised profusely about that. If you've had a Harley Davidson or you've tried to change the battery on a Harley Davidson, you'll know what an utter ball ache that was. I had to take the side panels off, take all sorts of wires out of the way, and I've put my Optimate on there now, so I shouldn't get that problem again. But having a 13.5 grand bike delivered to your door that won't start isn't a great start, is it? But I think you would agree that is a beautiful looking bike, and as I said, it's taken me well over 40 years to be in a position to buy that. Not necessarily a budget bike, but this could be one of my last few bikes that I have, because if you've been following in the channel for a while, you'll know I have said that I was going to give up biking when I'm 60 or thereabouts. That's the plan anyway, which is in 2.5 years time. So I've still got 2 or 3, 4 bikes that I really want to try out, and this was one of them. So I decided to go balls out and get something for me. You know, I've worked hard, I've saved hard, and finally I've got a stunning Harley Davidson. I think you would agree. The reason I chose this over the Fat Boy is because the Fat Boy is a little bit too big, I think, and the reason I chose it over the Sportster S is because that's a little bit too small, and I think this is just a perfect size for me. And there are a couple of things I'm going to change. I'm going to try to change these little footrests here, and I'm going to get a nicer kind of gear shift bar here. There's a few little cosmetic add-ons I want to put on there. I did make a whole video about all this stuff that I bought from AliExpress, but it was utter garbage. Nothing fitted. It was just really comical. Yeah, I bought a screen for it, a little bikini screen. Nothing fitted. I don't know what they designed it for, but it wasn't for this. The only thing that did fit in the end was this little plastic guard here for the radiator, and even that kind of barely fits, but that was about £4, I think, something like that. But as I said, I'm going to buy some proper stuff and fit that on there to suit my needs. I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep this, because you know me, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know I don't keep bikes very long for millions of reasons. Now, you may ask yourself, why did I get rid of the GS 1250? My feeling is that, I think I said it in the last video, it's soulless. It's got no fizz to it. It's an amazing bike, and I actually really enjoyed riding it. And I loved the screen, I loved all the torque and the power it had, I loved the luggage, I loved all of that kind of stuff. But I never once parked up anywhere, looked back at it and went, that's mine, I love that bike, isn't it special? I never rode into a car park and people kind of turn around and say, oh wow, what's that? You're not going to get that. And as a biker, 40 odd plus years, I think that's part of it. You want to have a special bike. You want to be able to look back at it and say, that's my bike, I love it. You know, I guess it's almost like having an ugly fat girlfriend. I'm sorry if that offends you, but it's like that for me. You know, I want something that people are jealous of almost. You know, I want to be able to roar down the road and people go, wow, what's that? You know, and I think this covers that quite well. Everybody looks around and see what this is. I will give you a little start up as well, if I can, one-handed. Keyless ignition, of course, just like the last one. If I can just get all this going. Yeah, as you can see here, we've got range 51 miles and miles per hour was that tiny little thing there, and then the gear indicators in this corner here, all that kind of stuff. And well, there are certain angles you can't see that very well on, and as I said, it condensates. Anyway, I digress. Let's get these big girls started up. I think you'd agree that sounds pretty damn stunning. Nice and throaty without being too obnoxious, which is exactly what you want on a bike really when you get to a certain age. And as I said, also, I think you'd agree that looks bloody awesome, that exhaust there. We'll give it a bit of a rev. I think you'd have to agree that is exactly what you want from a Harley Davidson. I mean, they don't sound quite as throaty as the old school Fat Bobs and some of the old school Fat Boys, etc, etc. But I think they've done a very good job with those Vance and Hines. They're really, really meaty, and they give you just enough verbal so people know you're on a Harley. Anyway, that is what's happening with me at the moment, guys. As I said, we are going to do a ride-along video on this in a couple of weeks' time. I'm probably going to buy some aftermarket bits and bobs. I'll give you my thoughts on those as and when they arrive and we fit them. But from Budget Cars and Bikes on a pretty chilly end of July Sunday afternoon, and we've been out and done about 150 miles today, and I've really, really enjoyed it. Although it does take some getting used to having these kind of drag back bars here. It hurts your shoulders. After a while, you really can feel it on your shoulders, more so than you would do on something like a GS or even a Speed Triple. But, you know, first world problems. If that's the price you pay for looking as cool as hell, I'll take it. Anyway, as I said, from Budget Cars and Bikes, that is it. That is the 2020 Fat Bob. This particular one's done 5,000 miles, and it's mine, and I'm really, really enjoying it. So if you want to find out some more about this bike, see what we do with it, see what my long-term ownership thoughts are, etc, etc, please, please, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give this video a like, a share, a thumbs up, all that kind of good stuff. We will catch up in a couple of weeks. Not quite sure what we're going to have in the way of content, but there'll be something, I can promise you that. And yeah, well, as I said, from Budget Cars and Bikes, that is it for now. I'm off to get myself a nice big fat Sunday roast, and I will catch up with you guys in a couple of weeks. Ride safe, take care, thanks for watching.